Here is the veneered convent, the school, the church that they built, the Basilica. Right now, it's a big hole in the ground. Right now, there is a convent, but it's not the convent that was built in 1898. Next, please. Here they are, the School Sisters of Notre Dame. They look so friendly. How many of you in the room attended Catholic school, by the way? I just remember my cousins attended Catholic school because their mom attended Catholic school. My sister and my brother and I did not attend Catholic school because our mom attended Catholic school. They may be smiling, but you don't need me to explain. They mean business. Or else. The problem was that, and these are just generic Notre Dame sisters. I don't think that they were Winona Notre Dame sisters. I just found them on the internet. I especially like her. Yeah. I just want to jump up and say, yes, sister. The problem with the sisters that they had at St. Stanislaus School in 1892 is that they were all of German descent. The reason why Winona's Polish community sent their little kids to St. Stanislaus Kostka Church School was so that they could grow up to be Catholics, they could grow up to be Polish, and you can't learn how to be Polish, you can't learn how to speak the Polish language from a German nun. Through no fault of their own, these German nuns are trying to teach the kids English. It's really not good enough for the people of St. Stan's Church. Father Klawiter, the pastor at the time, the guy who decided they were going to knock down the church, he went on 2 or 3 different occasions to Chicago to try and line up Polish nuns to come up and teach at the church. And you put yourself in the place of these poor school sisters of Notre Dame who entered the convent because they want to serve, they love God, they want to devote their life to the Catholic religion, to their faith, and to helping them. No respect. Next, please. And again, the convent, this was the 1898 convent. The previous convent was somewhere around here too. Next, please. A peck of trouble. More problems about the Polish Catholic Church. Notice it says more difficulty about the new Catholic Church. Father Klawiter left in the middle of the night. Rumor had it that he had been traded to a Catholic parish, and I'm not making this up, by the way. 2 opposing factions. One says, don't build a new church. One says, must build a new church. Sit down, drink coffee, eat some donuts, and take a vote. Not in 1893. There's also a problem with the treasurer and the secretary of St. Stan's Church. Nobody can agree on who the real treasurer and secretary of St. Stan's Church really is. Again, have a cup of coffee and a donut and vote on it? No. Let's have a riot instead. Next, please. Meanwhile, on July 9th, over at the convent, the parishioners of St. Stanislaus are basically besieging the School Sisters of Notre Dame Convent, throwing things and yelling names. And this is the diary that one of the sisters kept. God in his goodness had pity on this parish by taking away from our midst Reverend Antoni Klawiter, who left secretly in the night. Next, please. The women were shaking their fists and calling the sisters by vile names, threatening to drive the sisters out of the convent. The women were the worst. And this was written by a woman. Next, please. Priest exchange. Poles They object to the recent exchange of priests. And the Polish community of Winona had a unique way of responding when they weren't happy with something that Bishop Cotter did. They would form a procession with torches and banners and sticks and march on over to the West End to tell Bishop Cotter what they thought. And of course, when word got out in the city of Winona that the Polish people are marching down from the East End to give the bishop a hard time, the Irish don't want to see that happening. We didn't have race riots in the street of Winona, thank God, but nobody knew what was going on. They're still babbling about Father Domagolski. They're still trying to get the nice young priest back from 1892. Next, please. And this is probably my favorite episode of the whole story. John B. Bamonick, who was a city councilman, the father of the founders of Cheerless Pain. My dad worked there from 1947 to 1953, and that was always what he called it, was Cheerless Pain. Mr. John B. Bamonick, who was a very influential member of the Winona Polish community, didn't think they needed a new church. So somebody came up to his house that night and started running a stick through the picket fence, yelling at Mrs. Bamonick and the kids, which is not too cool. Chased his wife and children indoors, and then the next day, this guy's going to the butcher shop, and Andrew Rozek and Joseph Rogala and some other guys jumped him and started pounding the crap out of him until he pulled out a revolver. People pulling in, this all happened at, I think this is the next slide, please. Am I good or what? 227 Mankato Avenue. And one of the things I most enjoy about traveling to Winona is that every house like this has stories. Every house like this has a history. Next, please. Finally, they installed a new priest on August 4th, 1894, Father Cieszynski. He was Kashubian. He was from Vitos, Winona's sister city. At first, they kind of liked him. It says here he's well known and liked by the Winona Poles. Next. And then, this is like the big brawl of all time. Dissenting element of St. Stanislaus Parish is going to secede from the Catholic Church. A committee is being formed. Bishop Cotter says he will not have a saloon keeper as the treasurer of a church in his diocese. Go ahead, yes please. And this is the really sad part here. Apparently one of the people who did not agree with Father Cieszynski was a fellow by the name of Frank Masiga. We have Masigas in the house tonight, this afternoon. And when this poor infant child was born and died, this is how bad it got. The pastor refused to have a funeral or any service at the grave because they were just taking their problems so seriously. It was all around this time too, I don't have a slide for this, that the infamous incident with the axes happened. They were arguing in front of the Jurassic House, I think, on Mankato Avenue, demanding that he should stop being the treasurer and give the St. Stanislaus books back. A crowd of about 400 or 500 people formed, and it just turned into a free-for-all. The cops came and arrested 15 members of the Polish community, took them down to the county jail. Everybody who was having the brawl, they made up. There's 15 of our people down in the county jail. Let's go bust them out. So, I mean, they patched up all their differences with each other, apparently, you know, sorry about that sucker punch I hammered you with. We got to go bust our guys out. And they marched downtown where they were met by the police department. But there weren't enough cops to hold off the Polish visitors, so they got the firemen too. The firemen were holding axes. We don't have guns, we've got axes, but we do know what to do with the axes. And somehow, the situation resolved itself. But a couple of years afterwards, some firemen were walking down an alley on Mankato Avenue, off of Mankato Avenue, with their axes. And somebody said, "Hey, look, guys, it's the guys with the axes." And the Polish guys jumped them. They never forgot, they never forgave. Such is the Kashubian way. Next, please. Harmony prevails. Yeah, right. Next. And here is where Reverend Pacholski comes in. Reverend James Pacholski, at the time he came down to St. Stanislaus, was 31 years old. He was ordained at the age of 26 in Minneapolis, and he immediately founded, at age 26, Holy Cross Parish in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which was Minneapolis' first and biggest Polish parish. He was that good. They didn't really want to let him go from Minneapolis, but the St. Stan's situation was so desperate that they really needed somebody to come in on a white horse and save the thing. The former Mother Superior, who is Irish, will be replaced by a Polish lady from either Detroit or Milwaukee. He got his Polish nuns, and he got them immediately. He still also has, though, this big, huge hole in the ground where the church used to be. Next, please. On October 28, 1894, the cornerstone was laid in the pouring rain, and there was a parade anyway. And, how to put this? Winona had not only a pastor for St. Stanislaus Church, but in Father Pacholski, Winona had a leader, for a strong, visionary leader for his Polish community, who would stay at his post literally until his death in 1932. Father.
Have you uncovered any place in the list of priests, which I'm trying to do, Antoni Klawiter, who actually tore down the old church and hired the contractor and dug the hole?
Okay, I think I can speak to that, Father. Father Paul asks a good question. Who is responsible for what? Because as you probably know better than I do, Father Pacholski wound up getting all the credit for everything, which is ever so slightly unfair. Father Klawiter, who came in 1893, was the one who basically enforced the knocking down of the church. So we've got this great big hole in the ground. The other priests could not get the program in gear. They just had this hole in the ground, and they're spent basically 1893 to 1894 trying not to kill each other. They were capable of arguing about the contract to lay the foundation. They would get into fist fights over who the contractor was going to be. And it wasn't until Father Pacholski came that they got with C.G. Mayberry, the architect, and built that church kind of like one brick at a time. They didn't have enough money to build the whole place in one sit. They had to have fund drives. They had to have pledges. But that's when the really hardcore scrimping and saving and building took place. So basically, Klawiter dug the hole in the ground. Cieszynski just kind of ignored it.
Because he wanted to know, during his time, he must have had the vision for that concept of how big it was going to be and where it would fit.
Now, Klawiter definitely did, and actually I believe Father Cieszynski also built churches. Like in Vilna. I mean, he was a very accomplished priest. It was just his bad luck to serve St. Stan's for the month of August 1894.